Hello and welcome to Off My Shelves, and this is a look at My Favourite Thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris. So we will get underway. My Favourite Thing is Monsters by Emil Ferris is a very disarmingly deep and impactful book, I think, and it is styled in this way that it's supposed to be like a journal of a 10-year-old girl and charting a period in her life. So there's a lot going on, a lot of change. But before I get into the story, the build of this book. It's a very well produced paperback book, French flaps, really well made, really well bound, really well put together book, to be honest. In terms of paperbacks, it is the top drawer. The paper quality is matte finish paper, but it's really thick and really high quality. Yeah, there is nothing at all wrong with the build of this book, to be fair. And in general, if you're going to buy a paperback, you want it to be nice sized, well built and well constructed like this book. Yeah, Fantagraphics really do kind of show off a lot of the time with what they can do with book printing, to be fair, which is great for the consumer. So My Favourite Thing is Monsters is the story of Karen Reyes, a 10-year-old girl, and the book we're reading is meant to be her personal journal. So it's got lined paper in it and the pinholes for a clip binder and things like that. So it's all done as well in kind of pencils and pens and watercolour washes, anything that you would have, I suppose, lying around your house. It's not done in that kind of penciled and ink style that you would get in a lot of comic books. It's very unique stylistically. Lots of biros, lots of pencils, lots and lots of cross hatching going on. Amazing. But the artwork is mind-blowing. It is absolutely phenomenal. This book is a force of nature for artwork, to be honest, because it's very caricature, very cartoon-esque, the people, but the architecture and the style of the buildings and everything is really super well done. And in general, how she depicts the characters in this book is phenomenal, and the imaginative way she lays out the pages is very relaxed and very kind of intimate, like a journal. So, you know, there's no real format to the whole thing, which makes it in places hard to follow the reading order of things, but that doesn't necessarily bring you out of it or put you off. It just makes it feel more kind of lived in and real, like it is an actual journal. But the artwork is just insane. When you get these splash of colours throughout, they really make an impact, because the majority of it is in that pencil, pen type style, but then when the colours come in, they just bring certain pages to life. It is without doubt artistically one of the best books you'll ever see. Even if you don't like that caricature style, it's hard to not appreciate the amount of effort and work that goes into the art. Karen, the main character of this book, perceives herself and portrays herself as a werewolf, as a monster, because that's what she most admires and that's what she's the biggest fan of. She watches horror movies and she identifies with the monster, the outsider, the one that's chased, the one that's pushed out from where he lives and all this type of thing. She very much identifies with the monsters in these old, you know, horror movies. It's set in the late 60s, so there's very tumultuous time in America, and it's set in Chicago. Now, one of the main plot threads of this entire book is Karen and her life and how she perceives herself, her sexuality growing up, how she learns about the world around her, the friends she gains, the world of Chicago in the 1960s that she's in. It's very much following her story, and because it's the diary, you get a lot of her intimate thoughts and emotions on the situation she's finding herself in, like being bullied, like being seen as an outsider, but then equally portraying herself as a monster as well, and having comfort in being an outsider, in being separated from society, that being a comfort blanket to her. And at once you think it's a bit too advanced for a 10-year-old girl, but then as the story goes on, you realise that her brother has taken her to art galleries at quite a young age. She's very intelligent, very ahead of the game young girl. She's really old, far beyond her years, to be fair. She's kind of very much ahead of the game in terms of education, in terms of artistic creativity, as this book kind of alludes to. But she's really ahead of the game, but then really clueless about so much stuff. But her neighbour Anka, who she's got a close relationship to and who she thinks is beautiful and intriguing and wonderful and mysterious, and she always paints her in this blue tinge. She wasn't actually blue, as she says in her diary here, but she paints her in that way because she always seemed sad and that type of thing. But she gets found dead and it's presumed to be a suicide, but she doesn't believe it. So Karen takes this as a cue to start investigating and turning herself into a bit of a detective. So Karen's story and Anka's story are really the two main threads of this book. So Karen slowly discovering more and more about Anka, finding out more about her to try and find out the people she knew and if someone did murder her and all that. So finding out about the people she had relationships with, where she came from, and she was German. So that story then comes into play because she records her story on cassette and Karen listens back, and that story and Karen's story as you go forward get far more depth and dark and brooding and really horrible in many respects, to be honest, because Karen has such a difficult time in her day-to-day life in Chicago, and her mother falls unwell and she has to rely overly on her brother, who's one of the main big inspirations in her life in teaching her about things. I mean, the book goes through whole sections where her and her brother go to an art gallery and they talk about painting and how they interpret different paintings and how he nurtured her to have just a love for art, and he covers his body in tattoos and things like that. But equally, he's very much a playboy, so he's out there getting off with women and really not taking responsibility over a lot of things. And so when the mother falls ill, at the same time she's investigating Anka's death, it adds a whole new layer to the brother-sister relationship and to Karen's life in general. And so you've got all that playing out, but then when Karen starts listening back to the tape cassette recordings of Anka's life in Germany, then you go into whole new avenues where Anka, because she's Jewish and because she is in the situation she is in Germany, she gets pulled in and becomes a sex slave essentially as a child. There's a lot of horrific scenes, and there's obviously a lot of empathy that you feel for the characters because they are very much going through the ringer. I mean, when you meet Anka, when she is, you know, befriending Karen, she's quite damaged psychologically and her body's got visible scars, and you slowly peel away the story as to why she's damaged psychologically, why she's got those scars, and possibly even why she is actually dead. Now, it can be quite off-putting explaining a story that essentially is about a girl who feels like she's so separate from the world that she depicts herself as a monster in her diaries, that she is beaten up and abused and her mother falls unwell and her brother doesn't really raise the game to look after her. And so that bit seems like, oh, that's a bit intense to read. And then you've got the other bit of Anka, who has kind of gone through such an intense amount of abuse, sexually and physically, back in Germany and in America. So when you're explaining this book, you're like, well, I don't really want to read that. It seems a bit too intense. It seems a bit this, it seems a bit that. But trust me, you don't finish this book feeling overwhelmed and down. You finish this book wanting to find out more, wanting to find out more about Anka's death. You wanted to find out more about where Karen goes, because as the title of the book says, this is book one. There is a follow-up to this, and it ends very much with the promise of book two, because we haven't finished the storylines or anything like that. You do get a lot of answers, but equally then you get a lot of questions as well, so it's not a complete story. Needless to say, no matter what I say about this book, it should be read. I think it should be read and absorbed and talked about and thought about in different ways, because it is definitely one of the best drawn books and most uniquely drawn books you're ever going to find, ever, I think, to be honest. I think just from an artistic point of view, it demands your attention. And then from a story point of view, it shows the impact of abuse. It shows the impact of bullying. It shows the impact of people being separated from, you know, the mainstream conservative parts of society. And it follows their story and tells their story. Even though it's fictionalized, obviously, it does feel like Emil Ferris has brought lots of elements of her own life into this story in different ways. But either way, it's a phenomenal read. As hard as it is in places, it's incredibly rewarding by the end. And I cannot wait until part two comes out, book two, because I am eager, and that says it all really. Even though it's difficult to read in places, I'm still very eager to find out where this story goes, what happens to Karen, does she find the answers she's looking for, and what happens to her and her brother and her family and everyone really. I really want to find out more. Book 2 has been solicited, I think, for September this year, but that has been one of many solicits that this book has seen. It was supposed to come out about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. So hopefully it'll drop soon. I'm certain book 2 will finish this storyline out, but at the moment it is an exceptional start to a very deep story that I want to find out more about. But thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.